Hello, friends. Welcome. It is week 6, lecture 1. Happy Pi Day, everybody. I don't know if you knew this. It is 3.14 or March 3rd or 3rd, March 14th. So happy Pi Day to everybody that celebrates or go, make this an excuse. Go get some pie. It could be apple pie. It could be, I don't know, pizza pie, pie crumble. Doesn't even have to be a pie, honestly. Just make anything and just call it a pie. Yep, it's Einstein's birthday as well. This has really gotten off track. So happy Pi Day. I don't know if it's actually Einstein's birthday, but I trust Chris with my life. So here we are. Awesome. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We got a little bit longer of, not longer of a day, but we got a busier day. So I want to make sure that we have ample time for actual class stuff. As always, you got discussion questions that are due by 11:59 p.m. Sunday, March 19th. Some of you I will never name names, but some of you guys are already on your 4th missed one. Just as a reminder, if you hit 5, you will be suggested for dismissal. There's nothing I can do. You can't make them up. I wish that there was. It is fully out of my hands, or else I would just like sneak it to you. So please make sure that you're doing them. They don't take very long. They're already all open. Like, tell yourself that you're going to do this after class. You're just going to go knock them out. You don't have to worry about them for the rest of the stack. So please make sure you do your discussion questions. They are due by Sunday. This was a non-official check-in. Next time will be an official check-in. So if you are over that limit, then unfortunately you will be recommended for dismissal. And again, it's out of my hands. There's nothing I can do for you. You have some core assignments. You have project managers part 1, 2, and 3. So that's this week. So make sure that you are looking at those. You are doing those. They are important. I would say they're very, 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 very important for the exam to help you understand and know how the exam works and how everything is working. Cool. Just so you know, the belt exam opening day is Friday, March 17th. I'm going to go in depth on this on Thursdays. So for those of you that are kind of looking at what is it going to look like, I'm not going to talk about it till Thursday because I want to get through the material today and tomorrow. And this usually takes up 15 to 20 minutes. And I think that's really valuable for us to know to really dive into this team manager full build. So we're not going to do that. But I'll talk about it more in depth on Thursday, what you can expect if you've already taken a full stack exam. It's very similar, 5 hours. If you do it within 5 hours as red belt. And if you do the additional features, that's a black belt. If you do it within 24 hours, that is an orange belt. And then if you do it post 24 hours, well, then that's a retake. But we'll go really in depth on all of that later on. But it is March 17th, which is also St. Patrick's Day. So we got quite a few holidays: Pi Day, St. Patrick's Day. What a time to be alive. I will also be sending out an email tomorrow that basically lets you know your status. So if you guys do recall, if we come here, well, there is this statement here that says that you must have 90% cores completed. I think, yeah, this guy's perfect. So that means 90% is 11. So it says 11 cores must be completed today. What that means is because technically project manager 1, 2, and 3 are not due until Sunday, where, I'm not going to require you to do those, though I would say make sure you do them before the exam. What that does mean is you have to have 90% of every core assignment up to week 6. So of 11 means that you have got to turn in 10 out of 11 assignments in order for you to even qualify for the exam. If you do not have that by Friday, then I am not going to, then you're just going to miss out on a weekend, is what that means. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, I don't work the weekends because I'm a human, right? And so if you finish it on Saturday afternoon, you're like, okay, Will, I'm ready for my exam code. I'm not going to get to it until Monday because I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays. So I will be sending out an email tomorrow that lets you know what your current status is, where you're at, what you need to accomplish. So if you are, 5 out of 11, then I'm going to say, hey, you need at least another 5 assignments to even qualify. And then I will check, and I will, on Friday, I'll do one more quick check through to see who is fully completed. Because if if you're still working on some assignments and getting caught up, that's okay. But if by Friday, those aren't by end of day, I would actually say like 4 o'clock Friday. If you haven't submitted everything, then you will get an exam code on Monday. So sorry to be kind of brash. I think that's the word on that, but yeah, and make sure that if you are in one of the camps that you don't have 90% yet, but okay, Friday, I'm going to get it done and I'm going to get it submitted. I am not going to constantly be checking. So it will require that once you submit it, you send me an email and say, hey, this has been submitted. I will go in and check and I'll send you a code if everything is good to go. Any quick questions on that? Again, I don't want to talk too much. We'll talk about it on Thursday, but I will be sending an email tomorrow that lets you know, hey, here, you've already qualified. You'll be good to go. Nothing left on your part. I'll send you the code on Friday morning. Or I'll say, hey, you have a couple more assignments that are needed in order for us to get a code. So any questions? Okay. Well, then perfect.
Oh yeah, that's my thing. So recorded. Hey guys, please reach out. If you're watching this recording, I'm talking to you. Please reach out if you need help. I'm here. I work weekends. So if you're struggling, please reach out. I am checking assignments. I am seeing some folks struggling. So you are more than welcome to book a one-on-one with either me or Will to help get you caught up and on track to graduating. Those who are reached out. I've reached out to some folks already last week or this weekend. So if you're not one of those folks that come to class or are unable because of work schedule, which is fine, just please book a one-on-one to help me, to help you to get back on track. And that's my weekly reminder. And I'm back. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. Okay. Any questions before we move on? We move forward. Everything clear as mud. Good to go. Or if there's questions, happy to answer them now for the next couple of minutes. Cool. Great. Just a little bit of a recap. We are working on this project right here. We're doing team manager. Now we're going to make it a little bit different. We're going to do it a little bit different than this, just because I want to make sure that we can accomplish everything that is getting you ready for the exam. So what that means is we're going to try to build these two today. Not sure that we'll get fully done with these, maybe not this delete stuff, but we'll try our best. We're going to try to build these two today, build this tomorrow at least. This functionality is going to be a little bit challenging to an extent. Not that challenging, but it's going to be challenging. And I'm going back and forth because it is helpful and it might help you for the exam. But one thing we are going to build out tomorrow that I'm going to make a little bit more of a priority is we'll build this out. This shouldn't be too hard to build this out. But I also want to build out when you click on this team name or when you click on this team member, this person. So in this case, like Lionel Messi, I want to bring up a page that also shows you just them, their stats, their current status, things like that. So just specifically their stats. So we are going to build that out as well. It doesn't show that here, but we are going to build that because it's going to be good for your exam and something that's super necessary compared to some of this. Just so you guys know, today we're going to, like I said, we're going to try to build these two out. We're going to connect both the front end and the back end together, build these two out, at least this one, and definitely at least get some of the stuff here. Tomorrow, we're going to build out the remaining functionality. So the one page of a player or one page of a player. And then this guy right here. Thursday for office hour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy whatever we have so far. Hopefully we're going to have a finished project or product. So we're going to deploy that and that'll be sort of the office hour. That's what we're going to show. And then what the rest of Thursday is going to be is it's going to be a walkthrough of what to expect for the exam, how to, kind of how to prepare for it, what I would tell you to do. Second thing is we're going to do some a little bit more challenging functionality that I don't think is inherently important for the exam. For example, if you're clicking on this list, this is bolded compared to add player. And if you click on add player, that's bolded or the font weight is higher than list. Good things to know. It's a little bit more complicated, but not really going to do anything for you for the exam. So what I'm going to kind of go off of this a little bit and just really try to prepare you for the exam versus going into these intricate details that actually don't matter for your exam. So that's kind of what we're doing today. Any questions on that? Okay, let's just jump in. So just as a recap of what we've done, and what you'll see also if you are looking at the code on GitHub, I have this week lecture 1, or this is week 6. So you might see that, but there is a folder called belt prep. And that's because it's going amongst different weeks. So if you do get confused, if you're looking in week 6 and you don't see the code, there should be something with all the weeks that just is called belt prep. And then that should have all of our code in there, everything that we're going to need for that. Cool. So just as a recap, we built our entire backend, right? We've done our server. We're able to have our different controllers, which is what we're looking at now. We have our different routes where we can find, all players, one player. We can create a player. We can update just partial of a player. We also add in this if we wanted to update the full thing. And then we can also delete a player, which is great. We've got a player model that has a couple pieces of information, our name, our preferred position. And then we have these game 1, game 2, and game 3 statuses with a default of undecided. And remember, we talked about this enum, basically saying that if it's not one of these, then it's not going to work. We cannot put that in there. So that is something to note, right? It must be something like this in order for us to actually create that. And if we don't add anything, especially off creation, then which is okay. And we don't really want to, because this is so sensitive, especially case sensitive, then by default, we just set it to undecided, and then we can handle that on our end as well. We had timestamps equals true, because that way we wanted our created at and updated at, and we have our player collection in our database. So that's all we've done. Now we've done the backend, right? We've handled our node portion. Now we need to handle our React portion. And so we're going to get into what we now call full stack MERN, right? Where we are really genuinely having our backend, our server that's got our routes, our controllers, our models. It's connected to a database. Then we are connecting it to our client, which is our React. And we are going to make requests from our server, or from our client to our server. We're going to get some information, i.e. we're going to get our players. And then our server is going to handle that back, right? So request response cycle. So we need to set that up. And just as a reminder, React does work with any backends. If you want to use Python, if you wanted to use Java, if you wanted to use a whole bunch of different things, you can. We are just currently using JavaScript. Cool. So something I want to note, especially for the exam, is just as a reminder, I'm in a parent folder, my Feb MERN 23. That is my parent. So therefore I don't have to do this get init. Gray has talked to you guys religiously about it. If you guys are continuously building new projects, and now that we are going to have a full stack project, we're going to have a front end and a back end. Before you do anything, before you create your React app or client, before you create your server, before you do anything, make sure you do initialize your repository. So you make a new folder, CD into it. First thing you're going to do is you're going to do get init. That's going to initialize. It's a hidden directory of .git, and that prevents you from having nested gits. This will be a big pain if you were trying to deploy and you have nested gits, and it's just going to cause you a ton of stress. So please, 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 please make sure, if you guys are not using the parent folder like I am, then please make sure you initialize before you do anything else. Cool. So we are going to do that. We have this, right? We've already done this whole portion. We've already created our server. We've already created our server JS. We've already run an PY. We've installed both of these guys. Now there's one more thing that we're going to do. And just so you know, right now we are on server, we're going to be on server 8,000, right? That's what our server is set up as. And we said that in our server JS, we have our port here. And then we said, okay, we are on server 8,000. Now, React runs on what server? Do you guys remember? Anybody remember? So back in, yeah, 3,000, right? So there's this thing that we have to do in order for them, because they are not the same number, right? Because they are not the same port, we have to allow them to communicate, right? And so what we're going to do to allow them to communicate is we're going to introduce this topic called CORS. Now, what CORS is cross origin request, right? And so basically what it's saying is there is a request from server 3000 to 8000. And what CORS allows is for them to communicate and make requests from one to another, or from 3000 to 8000. I am promising you this will be, if you can understand this, it will help. If you don't understand this, this is often the bane of somebody's existence. It's not ton to understand, but if you are just kind of going rogue and trying to create your own React app, if you are trying to call an API that doesn't allow for cross-origin requests, CORS is going to be the thing that helps you. It's just something built in by the browsers that is preventing, it's like a security thing that a lot of browsers have built in that doesn't allow for one server type to talk to another server type, hence where we can come in and use CORS, and then it does allow it. Why we can use CORS and all of a sudden everything is good to go, not quite sure what is going on the back end, but we just know that this is a tool that we want to use if we want to communicate from our front end to our back end. So fairly simple. First thing we have to do is we have to npm install CORS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd back. Cool. Let me make this bigger for you guys. I'm sure that that was tiny. Okay, so while I'm in my server, which is where we want to be, right? In my server, I'm going to npm install CORS. So super simple. Just as you guys are building your exam, you guys can run this, and the same thing as when you run your Mongoose and your Express, you could do CORS as well. Just bring it all in together. But we haven't done that. So I'm going to say npm install CORS. Cool. I have now installed CORS. I can go, I can check my package JSON. It is there. We're good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run into my server, and we're just going to look exactly like this. There's a couple things that I need. I need to add in CORS and then require it. So I believe we already did that. Yeah, we did do that. Then secondly, what I'm going to do is I am going to say app.use CORS, right? So make sure that this is under our app. I don't think that these don't matter, this order right here, but this does need to be under the app and under CORS, right? Or else it's going to say, I don't know what CORS is. So all we say is app.use CORS. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this right here. So I like to have my app.use CORS. Perfect. That's it. That's all the setup. It's not that difficult, not that crazy, but now we've got CORS and it's allowing for cross-origin requests, right? So now we can actually start doing that. Great. Our backend is fully complete. It's fully set up. We are fully good to go. Great. So now what I would do if I were you is I would focus on your backend first for the exam, do exactly what we've done, build out sort of this functionality, test it with Postman, you know, code a little bit, test often, right? So test it with Postman, make sure you can put some stuff in the database, make sure that everything is working. Then once you're done, I would actually just, you're going to end up needing these routes here in a bit, but for right now, we're okay. You're not going to need this controller at all unless you want to do some more functionality, but I actually just kind of close this out and then let's move on to our client. So if you guys can remember, it's been a whole, like, honestly, like 2 weeks since we've been in our client. We haven't done anything with it. We have our app.js. Again, we are just chilling there. Haven't done anything with it. So let's go ahead and start diving in. If we're looking at this, there's a few things that we are going to need to build and operate, right? So I'm going to go to Team Manager. And I have a few things that I want to do. I've got a dashboard. So I might make that my own component, right? Where I've got some dashboard right here. I'm going to annotate. So like, there's a few things going on. Here we've got a main nav bar, right? I guess I would just say here. And then we've got kind of this sub nav bar right here that is the same for these two pieces, for this top one and this bottom one, but it is different than this guy right here, right? So those are different. So those are each going to be their own component. So we have a main nav that is within everything. Then we've got these sub navs. We have two of those. So we have first our list and add player sub nav bar. Then we have this manage players and manage player status sub nav bar that we'll have to build out. That's going to be kind of a little bit later, but we'll get there. Then I see that there's going to be this component that I want to bring in here that's going to have a bunch of information about my user. Like maybe I'm going to call this my dashboard component or, user list component, something like that, player list component. And then secondly, I'm going to have this form right here, right? So these are all the components I'm going to build within this project. And then lastly, I'm going to have one of these guys, but I don't need 3 different ones for each game. I'm just going to have the same component, right? I'm just going to put in whether it's game 1, game 2, or game 3, I'm going to put in the different information. So it looks like if I'm looking at this, and so this is how you want to kind of look at your exam is after you build in the back end and say, what do I need? Then you're going to sit and say, what are the components that I really need? Okay, I've got a nav bar, a sub nav bar, got a dashboard, I've got a form, I've got another dashboard, and then I got this guy right here, whatever this is. Cool. We'll call this like sub nav bar 2, let's say. So what I would do typically is I would look and say, and this is maybe a psychological thing. I would sit and say, what do I know how to do quickly? What is easy to me? And I'm going to go get that done. Because what you don't want to do is try to do something hard, right? And then you get stuck for 2 hours. And all of a sudden you're scrambling and you're panicked and you're trying to get a red belt or a black belt or whatever, an orange belt. And you've been stuck on trying to get this functionality over here to work and you haven't even built your form yet. And so it's stressful. So what I would encourage you to do is go hit the things that you know how to do, you know how to build, and then build up from there. So let's do that. Let's do exactly that. We know how to build a form, right? And we know how to display some sort of data. We've done that before. So let's do that. Let's go build all of this information out. Cool. So, oops, let me clear that. What am I going to do? First step here, I'm going to get rid of this guy. But what am I going to do? Anybody remember? Anybody know? What is my first sort of step here? What do you guys think? Exactly, Tyler. I'm going to go create a components folder. So let's just go into my source and have this components. What component should we build out first? Yeah, let's build out a form. That's good. So I'm going to say player form. Ooh, that was almost bad. Remember, it has to be capital.jsx. Perfect. Perfect. Cool. Now, one thing I would test just to make sure is I would test out, can I connect to my database right now? Right? So what is a way, if I was looking at this, what is a quick way that I could do that? If I wanted to check and say, okay, I want to connect to my database, and I just want to make sure that the cores is working, I can make those requests before I bring out my form and start dealing with that functionality. What's a way that I could do that? Yeah, so we could try to do like a get all. I think that's a great idea. Even before we hit the routes portion, which Robert, I think that's kind of where you would go next. I think it's not a bad idea just to do an Axios call and just go ahead and get some information first and foremost before we even dive into really what's going on, right? Before we dive into anything. So let's do that. Let's get an Axios call. So what I'm going to do is I need to bring in Axios, right? So I'm going to say import. Oops. Port. Oh my gosh. Port Axios from Axios. Cool. Want to make sure we're good there. Make sure we do have Axios. Did we even download Axios? Alas, we have not. So we want to make sure that I skipped. Let's go back to hello world. We have a couple things that we need. We need Axios. What else do we need? Anybody remember? What's the other thing for what Robert said we need? React Router DOM. Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to CD back. So I'm going to CD into client. And I'm going to say npm install Axios React Router DOM. React router DOM. Cool. So I first had to do that. Now, if I come in here, and I see my package JSON, I see Axios, and I see React router DOM. Perfect. Now we should be set up. Should be good to go. Great. So I'm going to bring in Axios. I have it. So now what I want to do is I just want to go ahead and make a call. So I'm going to say axios.get. And where am I going to call? What am I going to call? Do you remember? It's kind of telling us. So I'm going to say HTTP localhost. Now our server's on 8,000, right? And so remember I said that you might want to see what our routes are. So like what route am I going to do to get all of my players? It's API/players. So, oops. So I'm going to go to axios.get/API/players. Perfect. Ooh. Okay, we're going to get some sort of response and I want to console log that. I'm going to have a .catch, console log that, and then we should be good to go. So first and foremost, what I want to do is I need to get both servers running, right? So here I am in my client. So I'm going to say npm start. Let's make sure. Okay. Our local host is here. I also need to have my other server running. So I'm going to put a new window. I'm going to cool. So now what should happen is if I refresh, does this work? What do you guys think? No, this doesn't work. No, nothing's happening. Why is that? Why is that? Is Axios automatically ran? No, it's not, right? So what is the function that we can use? Exactly, Jonathan. I can do use effect to first off say once this is loaded, and this is just for a test, right? So you can say use effect, right? Axios.get. I have all this information. I need to bring in use effect. Perfect. But then I need to grab this piece of information. I'm going to finish this here. Just like this. Don't forget your dependency array, right? Or else it's going to keep calling. You can. So now here, I can say, okay, localhost 8,000 API players. Then we have a response. We're just going to console log it. Error. We are console logging that. So now if we come here and I refresh, let's see what happens. Do we have anything? No. Use effect is that. Should be. Well, let's figure out what's going on with our code, friends. Starting node server JS. That's working. We're connected to a database. Logo is never defined. You don't need to delete the SVG. We're in the main app. So use effect should say axios.get localhost 8,000 API players. We should then get a response that should console log the entire response and should run immediately.
Did you check the browser? Console.
You what? I'm sorry?
You check the browser and the console and see if it's an error.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. So you were right. Sorry, we're wasn't console logging here in our actual terminal, but it was console logging here, right? So we're able to get that information. So if let's check it again. If I just refresh, cool. We are able to get this data. So good. Thanks, Gray. Remember, our response is this entire thing. It's res.data if we want just our players. So I'm going to say .data. Perfect. Now, if I come, now we're cooking with oil. Cool. So we have all of our players. We're able to get this. This is telling me, great. We are able to make our response, right? Or we're able to make our request from one server to another. We're going into our database and we're getting all of our information. And here it is, right? We have every single user or every single player that we have. Great. Thanks, Gray, for that. I was like, what is going on? Why is this not showing? So perfect. Cool. That is a great thing for us. That's something we really needed. So let's go ahead and build out our add player or our form, if we will. Great. So I got this. I am going to also quickly, and I would say for your exam, this is very okay. I would encourage actually, is just, I'm going to grab Bootstrap. You can install Bootstrap as well, but I like to just grab it. I'm going to go to public index.html. Just gonna bring it in here. Perfect. Now I have Bootstrap, and now I can do a couple different things. We've got this. So now I'm going to create a form. And do you guys remember how what do we need in a form? There's a couple different things that we can do. So we're gonna have our form. Dot column medium 6. Offset 2. Cool. Within my form, I'm gonna have a form group. And that is just going to be my, that's going to be a label. That's going to be name. And then we're going to have an input type name. And then I'm going to have another one for just position or preferred position. Oh, thank you. And what I would do is, just so it makes sense, is I would name it whatever we named it here. So if I've got this guy right here, that's my label. It's the input that really matters. Div. And I'm gonna have a button, btn, let's go primary. Cool. So I'm gonna say create player. So let's look at this and see exactly what this form looks like and how we, what we need to do. So if I come back here, I come to team manager. Looks like all we have is I've got a player name and preferred position. So we can actually go ahead and build that out, this player name. So I'm gonna make it look exactly like this, right? Where I'm gonna actually have this H1 that says add player. Perfect. I'm going to have this say player name. Perfect. And then I'm going to have this say preferred position. And then instead of primary, I'm going to say info because that was green. And then info is kind of green. Cool. All right. So now that we have this, we can say, all right, what do we want? What else do we have to do? What else do I have to do with my form? So if I were to throw this into my app, yeah, I have to have an on submit. So let's go to that. Okay, so whenever I have an on submit, what do I want it to do? I need to have like a submit handler, right? Yeah, const handle submit. It's going to take in an event. We first are going to prevent default. And then there's a couple different things that I can do, right? I first prevent default. Then I need to create a player, right? And what we used to do is we would put that in state, right? We'd have it in state. We'd have it all sort of set up and then sort of set to state. But now we actually have information that we can send over, or we have, sorry, our server, our backend, we have a database, so we can actually send that information over. So what do you guys think I'll put here? What are we going to use to communicate to our backend? Yeah, exactly. It's not going to be app.post. It's just going to be Axios, right? So I need to make sure I import Axios from Axios. And what I'm going to do is once this is submitted, I'm going to axios.post players, right? Now I need to pass in some information where I say e.target.name.value .position.value. Perfect. So what this is doing is this is taking this information and saying e.target.name.value. So it's going to take this exact piece, this name, and this value. So this is new. And we could actually just target by the position value from this form. And then we're going to send that information over. Right? We're going to send that information over. Now I could put that in state and then basically just on change. I can do that. I think I might want to do that. Is to basically put them in state and then just package them up and send them over. I think that makes more sense to me. What do you guys think? What's your thoughts here? So what I'm thinking is we could do something like const name set name. Now I want to be cautious of what did I call it? Because remember, I'm sending this information over. And so I have to have this key value pair that matches what we called it. So in this case, I said name and then preferred position with a lowercase p and capital P. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name set name. That's perfect. And I'm going to say const. But I'm going to say preferred position set preferred position. Okay. So then what that allows me to do is just basically I can on change, update these. And then whenever this is submitted, I'll just take these values and pass them in instead of this guy right here. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts there? Any flaws you think I could see that you could see being an issue? We could do that. Somebody asked, what if we just bundled them together? We could definitely do that. We've done that before. Where we basically just said, and the reason I'm going back and forth is just because there's so many ways that you can do this. So const player. Or set player, and that's going to be equal to name and then preferred position. Oh, GitHub Copilot is a G. So then now what I can do is I can handle on change. Wow, goodness. So somebody asked, do we need to put it into state before sending it to the DB? And you don't, right? That's what I was saying is we could have done it the other way where just like this, once this is what this will do. Okay, let's just kind of put these away. Let's pretend that that doesn't exist right now. As of right now, we have this form. And what we want to do is if we were to submit this, we click the button and it runs our submit handler. So we need an on submit. And we're going to say handle submit. So once it does this, what it's going to do is it's going to go and it's going to pass in name, an object of name. So when we have a post request for Axios, we give it the actual URL that we're kind of the route that we're trying to target. And then we just pass it in with an object like this, and we say, here's the information. Like if I have information, then here's what I want to pass it in. And so what we could have done is said name is target e.target.name.value. And what this is coming from is this guy right here, this name position for my input. So it's going to go and it's going to say, okay, which input has the name? Okay, I want to grab that value. Which one has position? Okay, I want to grab that value. So then what we would have done is said, preferred position is this guy. And so now it's passing in this object of name and preferred position to this, and this would work just fine. This works very okay. Now, a couple things have to happen before we do this, right? What else did we do with forms before we just sent it off to a database? What are some things we have to do? Yeah, we have to do a validation, right? Is we have to make sure that there is some sort of validator. Now, this will be a portion on the exam. I'm just going to be blunt with you, where you want to have front end and back end validations. So we've handled that. So let's go ahead and say const. Const form validator. And that's going to be equal to this. And we're going to say, we can say if player name is less than 2, then we return false. Now we need some sort of value. So is valid equals true. Then we give it some pieces of information, right? And say, okay, well, we have these different things. If the player.name.length is false or is less than 2, then we return false, right? So it's not valid. And then we could say something like if, or we can return valid if preferred position is less than. So let's do that. If this preferred position is less than 2, then let's go ahead and return false. Or else if it gets to this point, then it's going to say these are both true, or these aren't true, right? Because they're greater than this condition was not true. So we get to this point and we return valid, which is true. So then first we just say if form validator. Okay, we did a lot right there. So let's walk through this. We created our form. We have a handle submit. We could have done this. We've never worked with that before, so I'm hesitant to use this. So I kind of want to stick with what we know. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, we've got this form. We're good to go. We're missing a curly bracket. And we're missing one here. Okay. So we have a couple different things that are happening. We have our form that has a submit handler. The submit handler is coming up and it's first preventing default. Then we're saying if form validator. So it's running this form validator that starts it at true. We've been through all of this, but just giving you guys a recap. We're checking these informations. If player.name.length. So we're going into our player object. And we're saying if that name is less than 2, then return false. If the position is less than 2, then return false. Else we return valid. So meaning that this is true, right? These are both past our validations. We're saying if form validator. Remember, form validator is either going to return false or it's going to return true. So it's saying if this is true, meaning that it's past my validators, then what I want to do is I want to say axios.post. I want to go here to this API players. I want to pass in my player. Now remember, player is this guy right here. I want to pass that information in, which is my object. Then I want to console log the response, else I want to catch an error. Now there's one more thing I have to do. Does anybody see it? What is one more thing I have to do? Refresh state. How would I refresh state, Jonathan? Not console log. There's something that's a little bit darker than the others. Oh yeah, I could refresh state. Yeah, you're exactly right there. my on change, right? I have this on change handler that updates my player to the correct information. I just haven't done that yet. So here, what I need to do is in my input, I say on change. I'm going to pass in my on change handler. I'm actually just going to take this little piece of code. Come in here. Perfect. So now my form should be set up. Let me get this a little bit bigger for you guys. Where we've created this form, our player form. We have decided to put the, we have our player state, which we need to do use state. Perfect. Where am I missing? I'm missing something. I have an extra and or I don't have enough above my return. Yeah, there we go. Was that it? Yep. So I was just perfect.
Hey, Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, you know how we were doing some validation and error stuff today, Griff?
Mm-hmm.
Would
Yeah.
this basically be the other way of doing it versus how we did it in ours with the setting on use state of object of error and all that?
No, those are separate validations. Those are in your exam. It will specify back-end validation showing on the front end. This is a different type of validation. Yeah, it's a different type of validation.
Okay.
I have got a curly bracket somewhere. Let's see, this guy to here, this guy to here, this guy to here. Perfect.
Line, it's line, if you scroll down a little bit.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
This guy to here. Now it should be good to go.
Is it line 39?
No, this, it should be good to know now. I'm not sure why this is saying it's declared, but it's never read.
You have line 39, you have an extra curly bracket. That was for the FCO set though.
There we go. Okay. Okay, yeah, thanks. Sorry, I added the curly bracket because I thought that's where it went, but it was my on change handler. Okay. Thanks for that. Sorry, guys, we had to debug a little bit. All right. So we're going through this again. We've got a form that we can create our player that has a preferred position and has a player name. Each one of these values we're targeting via this guy right here, his name. Once it changes, we have an on-change handler that's running. This on-change handler is running our set player. It's spreading out our player. Then it's taking the e.target.name and creating an e.target.value. Now, because I have this e.target.name here, what it's going to do, I just caught this. If I left this as just position, it's actually going to create a key of position for me. And so what would happen is my state would actually have name, preferred position, and then just normal, just position. So I need to make sure that these match. Name, and then these match what I'm sending into my database. Cool. What we're saying is, once this is submitted, we have this ePrevent default so we can keep our data. Then we say if form validator. What that's going to do is immediately go, it's going to run this function right here. First off, we're saying let valid is true or equal true. Saying, okay, yes, let's set it to like everything passed. Then we're going to give it some conditions. And if it fails any of these, meaning that it is true that player.preferred position.length is less than 2, or player dot length or dot name dot length is less than 2, then it enters into this if statement. And then it says return false. This could also be elif. Doesn't matter. Or else if. Sorry, I was writing in. Python today. Else if. What am I doing? I was doing. Sorry. Then regardless, it's either returning true or false. So if it's true, this is what we're doing. If it's false, we can redirect, or we can do something like that. We can handle that if we want. If it's true, we're going in and we're passing in our player, we're creating a response. Are there any questions of what we just did? Does it make sense? Can you just put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense? Perfect.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I'm just failing to see the difference, but when we make this const form validator and we're checking like the length of name and position, aren't we doing that when we make the model?
Yeah,
Am I
so-
just getting something mixed up?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So when we have our model, and remember, this is totally separate. So this is our front end. And again, on the exam, it might ask you for front end validations and back end. So in our models, we do set this up, right? We say that if it has this minimum length, these are our back end validations. This would also be our front end validations, and you can set it up to where you have both. But yes, you're exactly right. Now, what you could do is actually take this information, and if this wasn't true, right? I'm confused. If this wasn't true, then you could basically say, before you even hit the backend, before you even try to make the request, like maybe your API request costs money, right? Before you even do that, you're preventing this API request from happening. Oftentimes, you will actually have an API key, and you'll have, every time you make an API request, it might cost, 0.002 cents. But if somebody's there and they're not understanding what's going on and they're just hammering and like, why does this not work? What our backend is doing is saying, no, I'm preventing this from happening, but our front end doesn't know, right? And we can't really communicate that to somebody unless we did the ternary operator thing. But this is another way that we can do it, that we can have this information. So that way, if we say, else, like after this, if we just said else, we wanted to, return back some sort of piece, let's say we had some state that had our errors. And then on the front, we just typed, set state to error. So like, let's say, for example, we had where am I? Oh yeah. Some say we had like const error setters. That was an object, right? What we could do is say, if this is false, so else, we could say set errors to this. So then what we would do, and then this would just be empty, right? Where we could then show the errors here. And then if there is an error, or if it is like a name or preferred position error, then all of a sudden it shows on the page, hey, there's an error, name must be at least 2 characters, preferred position must be at least 2 characters. So that way our user says, okay, great. But we've prevented this API request from happening.
So either way would have worked if we did the set errors or if we do the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so both work, right? The errors, and again, just kind of reiterating, because these are 2 different servers, you can kind of think about them as 2 separate entities. This one is from our back end. We're saying, okay, we don't want MongoDB or Mongoose. If it's going to do this check, and it's going to prevent this from saving bad data. Now, this isn't necessarily going to give us back something, or it might give us back an error, and then we pass that from one side to another. What this allows us to do is we can actually set some different, instead of just having those errors and then creating like, if this is our response, then here's what we do. We can have this validator that just says, okay, here's what needs to happen. I can set these errors, And then if it passes, everything is good to go. Well, then that's great. We have this, we're up and running. And it passes through and we create some information. If those errors are, or if there is an error, then we can set our errors and show them. And then all of a sudden we could show that information like on our form. If I said,
So, and just to clarify, they can do either one on the exam if they choose to show the back end validations on the front end, or just to have the ones that you did here.
let me get back to you on that. I believe, don't quote me, I believe you have to do back end, and I think it's an extra functionality if you can do front end.
Oh, because I know for the previous exams, the back end validations is supposed to show on the front end, but this example that you're showing, this says you could do, I was just wondering, you do either or. So that's what I do remember.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't know if I can do
I can go look at that. I
Sure,
haven't
no
looked at the rubric in a while, so I can go look.
I think that's what Chris is saying. That's what I was trying to clarify, like, oh, you can do either or for the exam. So
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
think what I'm saying is I think the exam asks for back end, and then it's additional functionality if you do front end,
I see. Okay. Will do.
Yeah. which is what I'm showing. Yeah, and then here would be like your errors. Here's dot name, and then if that is true, then it texts that, else then it's nothing. So this is what you could do with the validator is what I'm trying to communicate. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so this class has gone way faster than anticipated. Okay, so let's just go ahead and see if we can get this viewing and we can actually create a request and pass some information. And then from there, we will, and then tomorrow we will kind of go on to the next part. So let's say our form, we call this player form. Perfect. So from player form, we're good to go there. So let's go look at our code. If our React app, we have this player. Great player. Cool. So let's say we wanted, somebody want to give me a sports player. Bugs Bunny, love that. Buggs. And preferred position, I think we're doing soccer. So what is, I think we had like 4 goalie. Ooh, I love that. Perfect. So let's create a player and let's see what happens. Okay, so we got a status okay. Bugs Bunny. Perfect. Now, if I refresh this, we get this guy. Remember, we're using Axios to in our app to just grab this information. So if I were to come here and look, because I refreshed, we're running Axios. Sorry that these are not centered. But now I have 4 players. Now including Bugs Bunny. So we're able to get information from our form, pass it over. Their preferred position is goalie. Their name is Bugs Bunny. We've already said that by default, these are undecided, and they get an ID generated, which is awesome. We are able to now, that was our first full stack sort of build or functionality, at least, where we created a form from React. We're able to pass that information. After it checks our validations, we're able to pass that information on to here or to axios.post. It goes, it takes our player object and it runs, goes into our server, find the information, which is create player. It creates it with a request body. That request body is that player object that we did. And then it returns our new player. Cool. Anybody want to have one more player that we can create? I'm just going to fix this real fast. Sorry, it's stressing me out. Okay. Lola Bunny, love that. Striker. Okay, Lola Bunny. We create, again, remember, once we do that, we get this response back. This is what gives us our response, and our response is a 200, which is, okay, that's good. We're able to create that. If I refresh, now we're gonna have a length of 5, which we see here, array of 5 players, and we're able to see Lola Bunny. Okay, I think that was a little bit more, and that was again a little taste of React again. How are we feeling? I think I think that's okay for right now. We accomplished at least one of the pages because these other two are going to be very similar. Basically, we're just going to use our get all and then just make this a table and show the information, and then we'll add in some delete functionality. Not super hard, so we'll do that tomorrow, and then this will be sort of the same thing, but we'll build this out on Thursday. But any questions on what I just did? Anything on building this form, connecting cores, the validator? If you don't have a front end validator, that's okay. Don't believe you need it. Again, I'll confirm and then check for tomorrow. And don't believe you do. But we had all this information. Let's check. I do want to check and see. Let's try to break it. If I say nothing and then I say goalie, what happens? Name must be at least 2 characters. And if I refresh, you see I didn't even get a request, or I didn't get a response. That's because it never makes the request, right? It never comes here because we have this validator. And so I don't even ping my API. And so, and also one of the things too is sometimes with like Mongo, so like Mongo Atlas, you get X amount of requests per tier. So if you have like a free tier, maybe you have 1,000 requests. And so if we can limit how many requests are actually going, then that can save us money as well. So by having these front end validators, we just witnessed, even if it's broken, then we don't even make the request, and that can save us money, right? That might be 0.002 cents that we just saved. So any questions on what we just did?
So I have random questions.
Yeah.
When you started the server, so it was in the client folder, it's node-mod server.js, correct?
No, sorry. Client folder is npm start.
npm start.
And then in our server, it is nodemon server.js. And that's a great point. Thanks, Robert. You do have to have both up and running. I know we've talked about that. I sort of just did it, but you do have to have both up and running. Your
Okay,
client
so
and your server.
Client's npm start,
Mhm.
and server is nodemon server.js.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
I have stuff that's not related to this.
Okay. I'll stop the recording if that's the case.
Yeah.
Any questions based off of this material? If not, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. 3, going once, going twice. Okay.